In the past and present, farmers are treated as primary producers, and throughout the world, primary production is highly resourced but underpaid for what it produces, because seldom is there an add-on that actually meets the consumer demand, and therefore there needs to be a different pricing structure to allow the investment and the cooperation that is needed in primary production levels to get the basic food stock moving forward and giving the incentive for the people to produce good quality food.
Space in the UK is becoming more and more of a premium. And so certainly in the sort of fruit and veg industry, we've got to be looking at new places to grow food. The urban areas have access to all the energy needs of the country, and we can utilise that waste energy in production of fruit and veg. The pressures on supermarkets for clean, good food are more and more, and actually it might not be the utopia vision of rolling green fields and vegetables, but we've got to think in the 21st century using LED lighting for growing produce in purely artificial surroundings so that you can control the environment it's grown in and make sure that the quality is there is something that supermarkets are pressing more and more for. And that seems to me as if it is a logical way to go.
I think going forward, short-termism has huge implications in that how farming is structured in terms of efficiency and hyper-competition is not necessarily good for, is the opposite really to sort of effective, sustainable land management. And I think that's, if you've seen over the last 15 years, we have short-term FBT tenancies, which means that you almost have to bid for that extra land. And so in terms of, it makes everyone think short-term. So if they've bid too much for a piece of land and it's costing them too much, they then perhaps won't look after that land in the same way that in the old way of the old farm business tenancy, which was generational based, you were the custodian of the land. So I think things like that are actually, this whole short-termism isn't good for sustainability and food security in the future.
I think with regard to distribution of livestock products for communities in the UK is that is going to be the whole issue of food miles. Where our communities are is not necessarily where our livestock are, and the inputs for the livestock are also far away from where the livestock are. So we've got food miles associated with bringing the inputs to the livestock, and then there are food miles trying to get the livestock to where the communities live. Yes, there is a space for farmers' markets. Yes, there is a role and quite a growing market, perhaps, in selling some livestock products through farmers' markets where it is locally produced material being sold to local communities. But no farmer's ever going to be able to sell all of their produce via farmers' markets, and there's also a lot of communities that are never going to be touched or accessed via that way in terms of number of those livestock products.
As primary producers, we're buying retail, our inputs, and selling wholesale into the rest of the market, which puts us at a disadvantage. I think the food chain and the whole supply chain in itself needs some correction. There's some people within the supply chain making an awful lot of money, and I think if along that supply chain, if it was evened out more, I think that would help with further development in crops, further development in products. So there are examples of food chain integration. If you look at Dovecote Park and Waitrose, when the beef price dropped this year from £4 a kilo to £3, heading towards £3, which is unsustainable for beef farmers, Dovecote Park stepped in and put a floor in the market at £3.40, so we will not pay less. And although they don't take a huge amount of beef, it made the rest of the marketplace think about what was going on. And since then, the price has started to come back up again, which then makes it viable for the beef farmers to continue.
I think on the whole, the UK is very well served with access for nutritious food. I suspect if you go to the outer fringes of the islands in north of Scotland and Wales, things are less buoyant than they are around London. But we have vast quantities of freely available, relatively cheap food, and I think therein lies a lot of the problem, in that the general public now perceive food as a very cheap commodity, and I think that's something that agriculture going forward has got to address in several different ways. But I think it's imperative that we get back to where food is valued for what it is, rather than just something that is a commodity that's thrown away and wasted.
Farmers and people, the primary producers, have to be prepared to put themselves out there and educate and be part of the educators, along with the middlemen, the supermarkets and the food retailers, and to try and create that link between, you know, the provenance of their food, where it has come from. I also think that the farming industry has to always be looking at how they can change and how they can improve their own product for the end user. Look at new varieties, especially in the fresh fruit and veg industry. Look at new varieties that are going to have better shelf life and that are going to taste, that have the taste there, that, you know, to ultimately delight the consumer. You know, this is the industry we are in. We are in an industry where ultimately most people, they don't care where it comes from as long as it tastes good. And actually, if you can be producing something that they can keep on their shelf for longer, and you know, that they feel they're getting good value for money for, then that's the part that we've got to play.
The problem that agriculture faces, and as an industry we face, is that we have got to educate the current generation to treat this food with far greater value. And if you go back to between the wars, the proportion of the income that the average household was spending on food was far, far greater than it is today. We've got escalating house prices in the UK, and the majority of all household income is spent on this ever-increasing ladder of climbing the housing market, and they are expecting cheap food. And I'm afraid my view is that going into the future, food has got to become a far greater value commodity, and I think that is where the role of shows like you can see behind me today, and the agricultural societies and all the agricultural industry has got to get back at educating the children. And I think we've missed it, you know, my generation has missed out on it. We're used to cheap food, we're used to going and getting a bargain meal in one of the fast food houses for sort of under a £5. Those days, I think, are coming to an end. I think we've also got to educate the public to appreciate that they can't have fresh green beans 365 days a year necessarily, and that certain things like strawberries are seasonable. And I think we need to get back to the fact that, you know, they should not be available every day.